There's been a new trend of intermittent fasting that got introduced to people, and I think intermittent fasting is an overcorrection of the problem that we have mainly here in the United States, is that we eat too much. But as people started to mess around with some intermittent fasting, they also started to play around with longer fasts, 24-hour fast, 48-hour fast, 72-hour fast. Kyle Newell is somebody that has a lot of experience with fasting, not only for himself, but for a lot of clients. He's having a lot of success utilizing not only intermittent fasting, but also the longer form fasting. I believe that fasting is highly effective. It can help rewire someone's brain and help rewire their association, affiliation, and their relationship with food. Tell us about how should someone handle fasting when they're exercising. You know, let's just keep it with lifting for right now.
Okay.
So somebody wants to lift, but they want to start to incorporate a 24-hour or maybe a 48-hour fast. How should they do so? What should they be cautious of? What they should be paying attention to?
So the first thing, like when you first do your first 48, let's say, or even a 24, I tell them, look, your performance is going to be fine, but you can dial down the intensity the first time because people have this fear, right? But most of these symptoms that people get with long form fasting, whether it's shakiness, maybe a headache or whatnot, hypoglycemia, all this stuff, it's withdrawal from the drug of food. That's what the withdrawal symptoms, that's it. They go away quickly. After having lots of people go to my program, I see 1-2 days, these symptoms are pretty much gone. So then going back to the training, they got to make sure they have their salts, you know, your sodium, potassium, salt.
So something to pay attention to is cramping.
Yes.
That could be
it could be potential, yeah.
That could be something that messes with you a little bit.
Yeah, and the performance, even if you weren't fasting, I tell people, get your sodium up. Such a good performance enhancer. So if you get that up, your energy is going to be fine. But you start with that. And once they see after the first workout, oh man, that wasn't actually that bad, then their confidence grows.
I personally believe that food is a drug. I believe that Kyle Newell was right when he made that statement. I also believe that food impedes us from feeling the things that we need to feel, and that is why people might want to entertain some fasting. I believe that inside the human body is our own doctor. If we would just simply sometimes get out of our own way, the body will learn how to heal itself. And I personally believe that fasting can be a route for some people to help with a lot of modern diseases.
One of the first things I teach people that go through my program is food is a drug. It affects the internal, biochemical, hormonal environment. So it is a drug by definition. And I don't tell people that it's meant to be enjoyed. But as soon as you start viewing it as that, okay, this has an effect on everything.
Right.
And I thought of that when you said a pacifier. A lot of people use it just to change their emotional state. Yeah. That's exactly it. You think when we're babies, right? You go on the mom's boob, you get that quick hit of sugar, and it pacifies you. So it's the same thing. You know, it's hardwired into us.
We know how effective fasting can be, but there's something that is doubly as strong as fasting. Kyle Newell believes that dry fasting is the answer for that. It is something that can be twice as powerful as a regular fast. A dry fast is with no liquid. In my opinion, it can be dangerous, so be careful on how you do that and learn a lot about how to do a dry fast. But Kyle Newell has a lot of great answers on how you can dry fast and how you can utilize that.
So dry fasting is exactly like it sounds. There's no water. There's no liquids coming in.
No water at all.
Yes, and it's more advanced,
no
obviously.
Apple juice.
Nothing.
No protein shakes.
Nothing. You can't take anything. Yeah. It's another level. Now, when I first started playing around with it, mentally and emotionally, I would will myself to do it, but I wasn't there yet, like mentally, to when I really started doing long form fasting to make it a part of my life. But then when I've been doing it more recently, it's just a mindset, right? And then you start realizing, like we've been told, you can't go 3 days without water, you're going to die. Well, when you look at some of the Russian research and you read some of the stuff, I think the record is 18 days somebody went without water or food. So the way I look at health, a lot of stuff is intentionally withheld from us knowledge. Dry fasting is so powerful at healing, the stem cell production, the autophagy, the fat loss, because your cell will kind of open up to give the hydrogen. You can make a liter of water on your own each day. Pure, clean water. It's like the cleanest water on earth. So that's really what it is. Now you could do what they call like a hard dry fast, which is no water contact, or you could do like a soft, where...
Oh, because you're dehydrated, and even if you take a shower, you're
going to absorb. You're going to absorb.
Right.
So when you get into the longer ones, like I experimented with doing the hard ones, but the research I've done, there's no real need to do that. So you could take your bath, you could do your cold plunge, you could do your shower. And the longer you get into it, the more essential that's going to be.
Have you gotten compromised from doing this before? Have you had a cramp or something where you're like, man, I regret that I took it too far?
No, I really haven't. The dry lips. Now, when I first did a 3-day hard dry fast, when I went to reintroduce food, for the first like 15 minutes, everything was just like sore, like it hurt, which was a little bizarre. And then it went away. But then I'm thinking, oh man, what did I do here? But it, like I said, it passed pretty quick.
Why would somebody sell me on dry fasting? Why would someone do it, or what's it needed for?
Great question. So there's 2 different avenues. It's very advanced for fat loss. Like if you were under a time crunch, getting ready for a movie set or something like that, or you just got a vacation or
want a good reset.
Yeah.
Maybe after the holidays.
Yeah, dry fasting will do it. I mean, you can shred fat really quickly on that. But where I try to guide more people is if there's chronic health issues. Like you go through this Phoenix protocol and some of this research, there's not one disease that dry fasting will not significantly help or completely make go away. Like I'm talking people with cancer and stuff like this. So powerful because you're getting that cellular cleanser, you're getting the stem cell production. And when they've done research like with the stem cells from dry fasting versus if you go to a clinic down in Mexico and get the injections and all that, way better when your body produces it at that level. But you can't really get into that unless you're getting long form fasting or dry fasting. So either a chronic health condition where your life is on the line, or if you have some type of body composition goal that you're trying to get to quicker, that's where I would recommend dry fasting. I personally have not utilized a lot of dry fasting. I have done a 24-hour dry fast before. This time of year in Sacramento, it starts to get tremendously hot, and I love to lift, and I also love to run. So I will not be messing around with any dry fasting anytime soon. I sometimes think that we have to be cautious when we're trying some of these things. Not eating food is one thing, but not ingesting any liquid can be extremely dangerous. So I would advise for all people not to even think about it or even entertain doing a dry fast when it's hot out or when you're going to be in a situation where you're going to sweat a lot. I asked Kyle if he utilized anything like electrolytes or anything of that nature during a dry fast. You could do that, but again, what I've researched, your body will regulate the electrolytes when you're in a dry fast. Like, because a lot of people think even, hey, right afterwards, I got to hit my salt. And everything I've read, they're like, no, you don't need to, just kind of have regular water at that point. And then you get into, your regular consumption. But you could keep the sodium there. Water follows sodium. So if you do that dry, you might be more likely to get a dry mouth. So I typically don't do that. But it's, that's what I normally recommend. But here's another cool thing about dry fasting. So last summer when I was messing around with it a lot, hit the 3-day, then I was doing the 48. So I shifted to 48.
3 days of no water, no food.
That was a hard one. No contact with water or anything. My lips got really dry. That was it, really. But then I transitioned off to 48s. Did that for about 6-7 weeks. And then I started making it 36s. So the first 36 would be dry, and then I'd finish the rest of the fast, break it Tuesday night. But Tuesday morning, when I would wake up, man, such a dopamine rush, knowing that water and coffee. And you feel fantastic. So it's a nice little hack where if you're going to do that, if you want to get into longer form fasting, do a little bit of dry, like a 24, if you can push it to 36, and then reintroduce. It feels like you're not even fasting. It's amazing. Like you could just keep going. So it's pretty cool. If all this talk about fasting is making you hungry, you can go over to goodlifeproteins.com and enjoy chicken, seafood, steak, ground beef, certified Piedmontese beef you're going to be able to get from Good Life Proteins. And you guys heard me talk about this many times on my podcast before. They have the leanest meats in the world that has way less fat than a lot of other traditional forms of red meat. Good Life Proteins also has scallops and shrimp and a lot of other delicious options. Make sure you check it out. Use the code POWERPROJECT to receive 25% off. So somebody's, trying to get into this. They want to do a 24-hour fast. They're kind of scared to train. They're scared to hit up a workout. They're worried about their performance. Should they maybe just start and do it on off day? Kick the tires a little bit? You could definitely do that. If they do that, I tell them, at least go for a walk. Right? Do some
sort of exercise.
Something. Go for a walk and see.
Moderate exercise.
Yeah. And then Yeah, it's all about building that confidence. When you do a walk, it's so good for you anyway. But do that, and then the next time, maybe try a little bit of a workout. You know, but I haven't had any issues with people that just get right into it. Again, it's just this. They're scared of what's going to happen.
Right.
You know, but yeah, definitely start with a walk. If you don't know where to start, you're nervous, start with a walk. You start to recognize your patterns, right? And then the mindless eating, right? So part of the mindfulness I try to bring people to is it should be a really great experience when you eat. It shouldn't be mindless. You know, it should be, and I literally feel like that every time I eat. Because I view it as it's the best meal ever. I pray before my meal. So fasting got me into praying before my meals too. So it brought me closer in my faith, which is, you know, we could go over that later, but it's really cool, man. But I always tell people, imagine feeling like every meal you eat is just such a blessing.
Right.
If you're eating 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day, I did it with bodybuilding. It just get to the next one.
We don't think about how nice it is, the stuff that we have.
Yeah.
And the access to the food that we have.
Yeah.
And every meal, even when you're on a diet, every meal can be really enjoyable.
Really enjoyable. And it should be. You know, it's an experience. And that's where we got to use that drug aspect of it, the feast aspect of it. Make it enrich your life.
It was my understanding that if you fast and you go on a really long walk, that you'll get into ketosis faster. And remember, ketosis is this process where your body is producing ketones, which will be a favorable energy. And I wanted to get Kyle's take on that, so I asked him this question.
It's potentially possible. When I was checking myself that first summer, doing long form fasting.
You were doing blood?
I would do the glucometer, and then I would do the urine sticks. But even that, when I would get to like day 4, I was barely scratching the surface of ketosis. So then I started realizing, okay, I don't know if you actually have to get into ketosis.
Right. That's what I've learned over the years, is that ketosis is great, and there's probably some reasons to kind of get into it, but scraping around it, I think, is more important.
I think that's exactly it, and it's much more sustainable. You know, a lot of people misunderstand when they do like keto diets, because I get people all the time, I said, well, what did you do? Well, I was doing this much protein. I'm like, it's not a ketogenic diet. Ketogenic diet is very hard to implement. You know, it's like, what, 95% fat? It's very difficult. So going back to habits, who's going to form a habit around that?
Yeah.
It's
usually like I'm talking minimum 1 gram of fat per gram of protein.
Yeah. And
that is a weird diet to be on, especially if you're trying to eat before or after training. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Eat a bunch of bacon. You know, bacon's amazing to eat at any time, right?
Yeah,
but have a bunch of bacon in an omelet before you go and train. You're like, whoa, like that's a lot. Yeah. So Mike Dolce and BioLane, Lane Norton, a lot of these guys might clip this and say these guys are out of their minds. There's absolutely no reason to do this. This is super drastic. Don't even F with it. What are your thoughts there?
So yeah, I respect those guys, and I get a lot of people that come at me on Instagram. My whole thing is, if you haven't tried it, you can't speak intelligently about it. If you haven't actually experienced it, I call that direct knowledge, right? A lot of people just read stuff from books. I mean, that's one thing, but I have the wisdom because I've done it, and I've done it with countless people.
You've heard that so much about testosterone over the years.
Yeah.
And then now look how many people are utilizing testosterone. It seems to be helping a lot of people.
It helps a lot. I got a guy in one of my posts here. I did my podcast on testosterone the other day. Some guy said, I can't believe you're condoning this, blah, blah, blah. I'm a cyclist. You know, I'll never. I'm like, if you haven't tried it, how can you speak intelligently about it? Like, you can't.
Right.
You can't do it. And all the studies and the research that's out there with mainstream nutrition science, who is funding that stuff, right? And the study usually follows after the fact of what we know works. Fasting, it's biblical. It's been around forever.
True.
Right? It's been around. It's proven. And until somebody tries it, you know, anything they say I take with a grain of salt.
I think one thing for people to keep in mind is that we're very tethered to our food.
Yes.
And I think there's a website this guy started. It has a lot of keto recipes, and the website's called ruled.me. And I never understood. I was like, what's ruled? You know, I was like, that's kind of dumb. Then I looked up his profile, looked up what he had written on the website, and he said that food used to rule me. It no longer has a rule over me. I lost 150 pounds. And I was like, that is amazing. And so that's what we're talking about here.
That's it.
Talking about breaking that bond that we have so strongly to food. For some people, that bond is so strong that they don't know how to control it, and it's an addiction that is putting people in a lot of compromised positions. So if you're in that position, then you might want to consider fasting, and you might even want to try to extend it even further into some dry fasting.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. And it's, when you get into fasting, like if you do a regular diet, you might not see the lag indicator of the weight for a little while, right? As soon as you take control and you go, if you've never done it, if you go 24 hours without eating, that's a win. Like, you're gonna feel good, and it's gonna give you that confidence you're talking about. Like, it doesn't rule me anymore. And that's really selfishly why I really came onto this. I was a prisoner to my food, and I loved eating, but I was just, I hated it at the same time. Tupperware, weighing everything, you know, living for my cheat days. So this was the most liberating thing that I did for myself. And then I was like, this works. I'm going to share it with people.
One of my big beliefs is that a lot of people don't need a really strict diet. They just need to figure out a way not to binge. Unfortunately, even when you're fasting, as soon as the fast is discontinued, people still have a huge problem with binging. So what I try to ask people to do when they're doing a fast is, you need to try to almost completely forget that you fasted in the first place. I wanted to get Kyle's take on this because he's the expert, and so I asked him that question.
How do we avoid binging? People need help with this.
So it's a big concern for people. So first, in the way I typically break my fast and have people do it, is I start with fruit for a few reasons. But part of it is the fruit has so much volume, it's going to hit those stretch receptors in the stomach. And right away, it starts putting the brakes on. And you realize too, after a 48,
it's enjoyable too.
It's enjoyable. It's the best, man. I love my fruit bowl. And I'll eat 3 or 4 pounds of fruit when I break my fast. I love it, man.
You really are a panda.
Oh yeah. So I do that, and then people, it's more of a concept. They think they're going to overeat. And I tell people, listen, what I teach you, if you follow the format, and I have a huge appetite. I haven't seen anybody be able to out-eat it, right? Because then we look at metabolic rates and all this.
You can't out-eat your fasting diet.
You can't. You can't.
I dig it. I like that.
Your metabolic rate can go up or down 40%. Most people experience it coming down through chronic dieting. So how do you get it up? It's really through the feasting. You got to build that appetite, you know, and your body will tell you. Now there's a learning curve with the longer fast where people say, man, I felt bloated. I'm like, there's a learning curve. You'll feel like that. Do your brisk walk, like Stan talks about, after you eat, and the next morning you feel great. Right? So it's a very common thing that people think they're going to binge. And a lot of times when people run into issues with what I teach them, are you doing your fruit first? No. I say, well, there's a reason I have that in there.
Right.
You know, it serves a purpose. You know, but that's...
And the fruit's giving you like a little bit of fiber. What does someone usually go to after that?
So after the fruit, and I tell people, again, I'm all about habits. Whatever you like, however much, I don't care, do it. Then, typical meal, Devin will make, let's say we're doing grass-fed burgers, some purple or sweet potatoes.
I'm getting excited, yep.
Yeah. I like doing, broccoli's probably my favorite veggie. I'll dip that in like hummus, cook it in some nice butter. And then on a regular night, I've got oats ready to go. I'll soak them in raw milk, cinnamon, cocoa powder, stevia. And then when I put that in the bowl, I'll put some like Justin's almond butter, maybe some frozen blueberries. So I'll do a little bit of fruit sometimes after, some of that Catalina Crunch. And it's freaking awesome. So it's just enjoyable.
Kyle's not lying. When you fast and then you go into eating your proteins and fats, your body starts to get used to that and your brain starts to get used to that. I really think this is a rewiring that happens. And for the people that are stuck on binging and people that are stuck on a lot of junk food, you're going to find that you're going to crave stuff that's actually healthy for you. You're going to crave proteins and fats. You're going to crave steak. You're going to crave fruit when you're coming off those fasts. I've said this before, but if you're not hungry for proteins, that you have fake hunger. And that's oftentimes what we're doing when we're sitting in front of a screen, watching TV, watching our favorite show, and just kind of eating a bunch of Ben and Jerry's or something like that. But fasting really works in this way. It will help kind of burn off some of that relationship that we have to some of those unhealthy foods.
You got to break, for most people, that North American diet mentality. I try to get people away from that. We're not measuring, we're not, just enjoy. And if people really struggle with it, I tell them, hey, just get your fasting period down first. Like you said, the foods will change. I don't worry about that. And you have a lot of leeway doing this. If you're going out with your buddies, middle of the week, and you want to have a pizza and burger, just make that your feast. It's not a big deal.
Right.
Right? So it's so easy, what I've seen, or simple, to make this your lifestyle.
16/8 variation of fasting just gives people a goal. It gives people a certain set time. And for some individuals that like to be diligent with things like that, it gives them an opportunity to say, I fasted for this amount of time, and now the eating window is open.
I mean, you're not going to move the needle doing a 16/8. I did that for 5 years. It doesn't do, for most people, it's not going to do anything.
When you did 16/8, you weren't happy with your physique?
No, what I found was that
performance?
first summer when I did it, or that first year, 2014, I was about 8 weeks out from 2 bodybuilding shows. And I was reading something by Lyle McDonald, going through, talking about stubborn fat. And the only way to really increase blood flow there was through fasting. So I was doing it purely for cosmetic reasons. So I switched I would have to starve myself. I was about 1,500 calories a day.
Wow.
It was throughout the years. It was a mess. So 4 meals doing that. The next day I cut it to 2 meals, like your 12 and 8 o'clock. And almost instantly I was like, same amount of food. This is much more easy, much simpler. I feel better. So, and then after that show, the shows were early June or early July. I was able to maintain a really good shape the rest of the summer. Traditional dieting, so the fasting worked, but then, but traditional dieting years before in the contest, I put on 30 to 40 pounds a week after. I would just blow up like a tick. But then what I would see with that 16/8, I would still have to, even if I was eating like 2,200, 2,300, I wasn't even close to lean. But then once I started going to the 1 meal as the foundation, I mean, like I said, I got a big appetite, but I can double that in a meal, and I stay much leaner. I just stay at the same spot.
For myself, that can be really effective. I personally have to be careful with turning that into a binge. So for me, I might have to have that eating window be a little smaller, but for maybe other people that can handle those 8 hours of eating more reasonably, they might have more success than me. The full episode with Kyle Newell, where we go in deep talking about fasting, is right here already, or it will be available this Monday. Hope you guys enjoy it.